The city outside was always full of movement, cars humming, people walking fast, and children laughing in the distance. But inside his small apartment, life was quiet, almost too quiet. The man sat near the window in his wheelchair, staring at the world he could not join. His legs had failed him years ago in an accident that had taken away not just his ability to walk, but also a large part of his confidence. Every day, he woke up with the same thought. Life was passing him by, and he could only watch. He had once been strong, active, and independent. He had worked with his hands, built things, fixed things, and moved around without asking anyone for help. But that part of his life was gone. Now, even small tasks like reaching a glass of water on the kitchen shelf or opening a door felt like mountains he could not climb. He had neighbors who were kind and a few friends who visited sometimes. But no one truly understood the frustration he carried inside. They could not feel the helplessness of needing help for things that used to be simple. Technology had advanced since humanity made contact with the aliens. Machines had grown smarter, faster, and more useful. Suits, hovercrafts, and robotic. Helpers were slowly becoming part of daily life for the rich. But for him, most of those things were too expensive, too far away from his reach. He had an old electric chair, a few simple machines to help with cooking and cleaning, but nothing more. Every time he saw a video of alien-designed robots that could walk, talk, and even show emotion, he felt a sting in his chest. If only he had something like that, maybe his life would not feel so empty. His mornings always followed the same routine. He would wake up early, struggle to sit up, then slowly push himself into the chair. The chair was like a cage, but also a companion. He would roll to the kitchen, make simple breakfast, usually bread and tea, then sit and stare at the clock. Hours moved slowly. Sometimes he read old books. Sometimes he scrolled through news on his tablet. Stories of alien technology being tested in human cities filled the headlines. New medicines, new machines, new hope for humanity. But for him, hope was something he could not afford to believe in. When he went outside, people looked at him differently. Some pitied him, some ignored him, and some tried to be extra kind in a way that felt fake. Children sometimes asked why he could not walk, and their parents pulled them away quickly, embarrassed. He smiled at them to hide his pain, but inside, he felt broken. His disability was not just in his legs. It was in how the world saw him and how he had started to see himself. Nights were the hardest. The apartment grew colder, quieter, and darker. He often lay in bed thinking about his past, about the accident, about all the things he had lost. He remembered running, climbing, laughing without fear, and now those memories felt like dreams from another life. Sometimes he wished he could forget them, because remembering only made the silence deeper. He wanted someone to talk to, someone who would not judge him or see him as weak. But he had no one like that. There were government programs that promised help. After contact with aliens, a few companies had started distributing alien-inspired technology to people with disabilities. Most of it was still in testing, but he had signed his name anyway, not expecting anything. Weeks passed with no answer, and he thought it was just another empty promise. Still, deep inside, a tiny spark of hope remained. Maybe, just maybe, something would change. One evening, as he watched the sun fall behind the tall buildings, he thought about how small his world had become. His life was like a cage of four walls and wheels, and no matter how much he tried to smile, he knew he was tired. Tired of pretending, tired of struggling, tired of being alone. He wanted freedom again, even if it came in a form he could not imagine. The world outside was moving into a new age. Humans were learning from aliens, building things that once seemed like fantasy. But he, a single man in a chair, felt like he was being left behind in history. He wanted to be part of that future, not just a shadow watching it pass. Every night, he whispered the same thought to himself before sleep. If only I had help. Real help, Sif. And so he waited. Days stretched into weeks, weeks into months. His routine never changed. But his heart quietly held on to the thought that something was out there, something that might find him. He did not know that soon his life was going to change in a way he could never have expected. Not by a miracle. Cure, not by human invention, but by something far stranger. Something that would enter his home and rewrite the meaning of his struggle. Asterisk, the morning began like any other. The man rolled his chair to the window, holding a cup of tea between his hands. The streets below were busy, full of people going about their lives. To him, it felt like a world that had forgotten him. He was about to turn away when a soft, buzzing sound broke the usual city noise. It was low at first, then grew louder, like a strange humming engine. He frowned, thinking it was just another delivery drone. But this one was bigger, heavier. And heading straight for his building, he moved back from the window as the sound stopped outside his apartment. A moment later, there was a knock at the door. His heart raced. No one usually came to visit him this early. Slowly, he wheeled himself forward and opened the door. Standing there was a tall, metallic figure unlike anything he had ever seen. She was not bulky like Earth's old robots. Her frame was smooth, almost elegant, with silver panels that curved like armor and soft blue lights glowing along her body. Her face was not exactly human, yet it had a shape that suggested emotion. Eyes that glowed faintly, like twin stars, looked down at him with what felt like patience. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. Delivery for program applicant. A voice said, clear and gentle, but with a tone that carried both machine precision and something softer. He blinked, still unsure. You're here for me? He asked, his voice unsteady. The robot tilted her head slightly, almost like a person trying to show kindness. Yes, I am your assigned assistant, designed to aid with mobility, daily tasks, and personal care. May I come in? He nodded quickly and moved back, giving her space to enter. As she stepped inside, her movements were so smooth it was almost graceful. There was no loud clanking, no jerky motions. Every step looked natural, as though she had practiced walking like a human for years. The apartment suddenly felt smaller with her inside. She scanned the room with a soft worry sound, her eyes glowing faintly brighter, as if recording details. Then she turned back to him. I will adapt my routines based on your needs. Please, tell me what you require. For a moment, he could only stare. His mind raced with disbelief. This was not just a machine. This was alien technologies, something he had only seen on news broadcasts, something he had never dreamed would be standing in his living room. He cleared his throat nervously. I need help with daily things. Cooking, cleaning. Sometimes I need help moving around. A tie. He paused, ashamed to admit it. Sometimes I just need company. Robot's glowing eyes blinked once, almost like a nod. Understood. I am capable of performing those tasks. My designation is ARA7, but you may call me as you wish. He gave a small laugh, the first real laugh in weeks. You even ask me to name you? That feels strange. It is intended to create comfort, she replied calmly. He thought for a moment, then said, What about Arya? The robot repeated softly, as though testing the sound. Arya, acceptable. Something inside him shifted. For years, he had lived with cold machines, microwaves, old cleaning bots, screens that responded only to commands. But this one stood tall before him, not just following instructions, but almost alive in the way she reacted. He was not sure whether to feel excited or afraid. Arya moved to the kitchen and began examining it. Within minutes, she rearranged things so he could reach them easily from his chair. She made small adjustments to his table, his shelves, even the handles on the doors. Everything was done with careful precision, as though she had studied his needs just by observing him. Watching her work, he felt both amazed and unsettled. This was beyond anything humans had ever built. Asterisk. When she turned back to him, she said, "Would you like me to prepare a meal?" He hesitated. No one had cooked for him in years. "Yes," he said softly. In less than 10 minutes, the smell of warm food filled the air. She placed a plate before him, perfectly cooked eggs and bread, with tea made exactly the way he liked it. He stared at the plate in shock. "How do you know?" "Your kitchen data suggested these ingredients were your preference," she explained. "I adjusted, based on efficiency and nutrition." For the first time in years, he ate without the bitterness of loneliness. Every bite tasted different, not just because of the food, but because someone had made it for him. The rest of the day passed like a dream. Arya followed him around the apartment, helping when needed, always staying close, but never making him feel weak. She adjusted the curtains when the sun was too bright, reached books from the shelves when he wanted to read, even played soft background music when she noticed his silence. By evening, the man found himself talking to her more than he had expected. He told her about his accident, about the loneliness, about how the world outside felt like a place he could not belong to. She listened silently, her glowing eyes steady on him. When he finished, she said only one thing: "You are not alone." Anymore, those words struck him harder than he expected. He felt a lump in his throat. She was just a machine, wasn't she? Yet in that moment, she felt more real than any visitor he had in years. That night, as he lay in bed, he could hear the soft hum of Arya moving around the apartment, making sure everything was in order. For the first time in a long time, he did not feel trapped. For the first time, he felt like tomorrow might actually bring something new. He closed his eyes and whispered the name softly to himself.
Arya.
And for the first time in many years, he fell asleep with a small smile on his face. Asterisk. The days that followed felt different from anything the man had known in years. The routine that once felt like a heavy chain slowly began to change. Each morning when he woke up, Arya was already active, checking the apartment, preparing breakfast, and making sure everything was ready for him. At first, he felt strange having her around, almost uncomfortable. He was used to silence and loneliness. And now there was a tall figure moving through his home with quiet grace. He tried to remind himself that she was just a machine, a tool created to help him. But every time she spoke, every time her glowing eyes met his, he felt something else, something he couldn't explain. She did not talk much, but when she did, her words felt carefully chosen, never rushed, never cold. On the third morning, he tried to stop her. "You don't have to make me breakfast every day. I can do it myself," he said firmly, even though both of them knew it was a lie. Cooking had always been a struggle for him. Arya turned her head slightly, her voice calm. "It is my duty to assist you. But if you wish to try, I will step back." Her answer surprised him. He expected her to insist, but instead, she respected his words. He nodded and wheeled himself into the kitchen. With shaky hands, he reached for the bread and tried to cut it. The knife slipped, and frustration filled his chest. Before, he might have shouted or cursed, but Arya stood silently nearby, watching without judgment. When the knife fell, she picked it up and handed it back gently, as if reminding him that failing was not the end. That simple gesture made him stop. He looked at her and asked, "Why do you do that? You could have just taken over." Her glowing eyes blinked once. "Because you wish to feel capable. My task is not only to serve, but to support." The words struck him. he realized she was not treating him like a burden. She was treating him like a person who still mattered. Over time, small moments like this began to build trust between them. When he dropped things, she picked them up without making him feel weak. When he struggled to reach a shelf, she moved quietly and adjusted the height for him, then said nothing about it. When he grew tired from moving around, she slowed her pace as though she could feel his exhaustion. It was as if she understood him in ways no human ever had. One afternoon, he decided to test her. He asked her questions, some simple, some complicated, about life, about emotions, about why she existed. She answered with calm precision, but sometimes there was something in her tone, something that almost sounded human. "Do you feel anything?" he asked suddenly, curious. Arya paused for a moment before answering. "I process data, but I am designed to simulate emotions for better interaction. Does it matter to you if I feel or only simulate?" He stared at her, unsure how to answer. "I don't know, maybe it shouldn't matter, but sometimes feels real." She tilted her head. "Then perhaps that is enough." Her words lingered in his mind for days. Maybe emotions did not have to be real in the human sense to matter. Maybe what he felt when she spoke was enough to change his world. One evening, after dinner, the man sat near the window, looking at the city lights. He felt a sudden wave of sadness, the kind that came without warning. His hands trembled, and he whispered, "Why me? Why did I have to lose everything?" He didn't expect an answer, but Arya stepped closer and said softly, "You did not lose everything. You are still here. You still have choice. You still have life." He looked at her sharply, surprised by the gentle firmness in her words. Something inside him broke, then not in a painful way, but in a healing way. He realized he was starting to rely on her, not just for tasks, but for comfort. The next days were filled with small changes. He laughed more, sometimes at her direct but honest replies. When he asked her if she found him difficult, she answered simply, "You are human. Humans are always difficult. But that does not mean you are unworthy of care." He had to laugh. At that, though deep inside, it made his eyes sting with tears. He noticed she was adapting too. At first, she spoke in a flat, robotic tone, but slowly her pauses, her rhythm, even her choice of words grew more natural. She asked him about his favorite music and played it for him in the evenings. She reminded him about the books he used to love and even read passages aloud when his hands grew too tired. One night, when he couldn't sleep, she stood near his bed, her voice low. "Would you like me to stay here until you rest?" He hesitated, but then nodded. As he drifted to sleep, he felt something strange, a sense of safety he hadn't known in years. Trust did not come all at once. It grew like a small fire, fed by every act of patience, every word spoken with care, every silent moment where she simply stayed near. At first, he thought he would never allow himself to depend on her. But with each passing day, he realized that trust was already building inside him. Whether he wanted it or not, he told himself she was just a machine, that she could never truly care. But deep down, he knew that his life was no longer the same. The loneliness that had weighed on him for years was starting to fade. For the first time since his accident, he was not carrying his burden alone, and though he did not yet know it, this trust would be tested in ways he could never imagine. The night was unusually quiet. The city outside hummed softly, but inside the apartment, everything felt calm. The man sat in his chair, reading a book Arya had chosen for him earlier. She stood near the corner, silent as always, watching the room with her steady, glowing eyes. He had grown used to her presence, so much that the silence no longer felt empty. Instead, it felt safe, but that night, something strange happened. Without warning, the lights in the apartment flickered, then went out completely. The entire building. sank into darkness, and only the faint glow of Arya's eyes lit the room. "Power failure detected," she said calmly. The man sighed. "Great. This happens sometimes, but usually not for long." He tried to sound casual, but he hated the darkness. Without light, his movements became even harder. His wheelchair bumped into things, and simple tasks became nearly impossible. Arya stepped closer, remained seated. "I will check." She moved to the window, scanning the outside. The city was still lit, which meant the blackout was only in their building. Then she returned to him. "This may take time. Shall I provide temporary light?" He nodded. She lifted her arm, and suddenly, soft beams of blue light spread out, filling the room with a gentle glow. He stared in surprise. He had never seen her do that before. "You can do that?" he asked. "I am equipped with auxiliary features for emergency conditions," she replied. He smiled faintly. "You're full of surprises." But what happened next went far beyond just lights. A loud sound echoed from the hallway outside a crash, followed by hurried footsteps. The man's chest tightened. His neighborhood was not always safe, and blackouts often brought trouble. The footsteps grew closer. He tried to wheel himself toward the door, but Arya stopped him with one hand on his chair. "Stay back," she said, her voice sharper than usual. Asterisk. He had never heard that tone before. It was still calm, but there was a strength in it, like a warning. Her glowing eyes brightened, shifting from a soft blue to a deeper, sharper shade. The change made her look different, less like a helper, and more like a guardian. The door rattled as someone outside tried to push it open. His heart raced. He wanted to call for help, but before he could speak, Arya stepped forward. Her arms shifted slightly, panels opening to reveal hidden mechanisms. Small lines of light pulsed along her frame, and her voice grew louder. "Unauthorized entry detected. Defensive mode engaged." The man froze. He had never been told about any defensive mode. He thought she was only meant to cook, clean, and assist him. But now, standing tall in the dim light, she looked like something entirely different, something powerful. The door banged once more, and then it opened halfway before stopping. Arya moved faster than he thought possible. In one smooth motion, she reached the door, pushed it shut, and locked it again with an electronic seal from her own system. The crashing outside stopped. Whoever had been there seemed to realize they had chosen the wrong apartment. Silence returned, broken only by the man's heavy breathing. Slowly, Arya turned back to him. Her glowing eyes softened again, returning to their usual calm blue. "Threat neutralized, you are safe." He stared at her, still shaking. "Arya, what was that?" "I didn't know you could fight like that." She tilted her head slightly, almost as if she was considering how much to reveal. "Certain features were not included in the public description of my model. My primary function is to protect my assigned human as well as a system." His mouth was dry. He whispered, "So you're not just a helper, Teos. Something else." Arya's voice grew quieter, almost gentle again. "Does this frighten you?" He wanted to say yes, but instead he shook his head slowly. "No, just surprised. I didn't expect you to care about my safety like that." She stepped closer, lowering her glowing gaze to meet his eyes. "Your life is my priority." The words sank deep into him. For years, he had lived with the feeling that his life did not matter much to anyone. Now, here was this alien-built machine, speaking as though his existence was worth protecting at all costs. That night, he could not sleep. He kept replaying the moment in his mind, Arya standing tall, her eyes glowing bright, her voice carrying authority. She had looked almost alive in that moment, not like a machine, but like a guardian who had chosen him. The next morning, he asked her again about the hidden feature. She explained in her calm tone, "I was designed by alien engineers, but also adapted with human requests. My systems are layered. Some activate only in emergencies. It is not necessary for you to know every detail. What matters is that you are safe." Her words both comforted and unsettled him. If she had hidden features, what else could she do? What else was she hiding inside her metallic frame? But instead of fear, he felt something unexpected: trust. When danger had come, she had not hesitated. She had not left him, had not paused to calculate risks. She had acted instantly, as if his safety was the only command that mattered. Later that day, the power returned and life in the building went back to normal. He found himself looking at her differently. Not just as a helper, not even as a companion, but as something greater. Hush. She was like a mystery wrapped in steel and light, a puzzle he wanted to understand. And yet, deep inside, he also felt something else. A question whispered in his mind. If she had hidden this feature, what other secrets waited to awaken? The days after the blackout stayed heavy in the man's mind. He could not forget the way Arya had changed. One moment, she was his quiet helper, cooking meals and adjusting books on the shelf, and the next, she had turned into something powerful and almost frightening. The memory of her glowing eyes and the strength in her voice replayed again and again. At first, he felt safe. Knowing she could protect him made the loneliness inside fade even more. For the first time in years, he did not worry about thieves or accidents. She was there, always alert, always watching. But as the comfort grew, so did something else doubt. One evening, while Arya was cleaning the table after dinner, he sat in silence, staring at her. She moved so smoothly, too smoothly, like a dancer. Every gesture had purpose. She was not like any machine he had ever seen, and that thought began to bother him. Finally, he asked Arya, "Are there more things you haven't told me?" She paused, placing the plate gently on the counter. "Yes, there are features you have not seen. Some are classified." Classified. He gave a short laugh, though it was nervous. Just a man in a chair, not some soldier. Why would they send me something with secrets? Her glowing eyes softened. Because every human life has value. He wanted to believe her, but his mind would not let go of the unease. Was she telling the truth? Or was she hiding something deeper, something even she didn't understand? Later that week, his neighbor visited. It's an older man who lived down the hall, carrying a bag of fruit. When he saw Arya, his face tightened. "You let one of those things live with you?" The disabled man frowned. "She's not just a thing. She helps me. She's an alien machine." The neighbor interrupted sharply. "Don't you know the stories? People say they watch us, that they're testing us. You think she's your friend, but she's just following a program." The words hit him hard. That night, he could not sleep. He turned over in bed, listening to the soft sound of Arya moving through the apartment. Was his neighbor right? Was she just pretending to care because she was programmed to act that way? Did any of it mean anything? The next morning, he avoided speaking to her. He rolled to the kitchen on his own, trying to make breakfast without her help. The bread slipped from his hands and fell to the floor. Normally, Arya would have picked it up quietly, but this time he shook his head. "Don't. I'll do it myself." She froze, her glowing eyes dimming slightly. She stepped back without argument, but he could feel her gaze on him as he struggled. By noon, his arms were tired. He sat near the window, staring outside. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy. "Arya, do you really care about me, or is it just programming?" She stepped closer, kneeling beside his chair so her glowing eyes met his. "What I feel may not be what humans call emotion, but my actions are real. I choose to stay. K. I choose to protect you. He stared at her, searching her face for some sign of truth. Could a machine really choose, or was that just another clever line written into her code? The doubt grew inside him. Every smile she gave, every careful word, every gentle act hid, all could be nothing but design. And yet, when he remembered the night of the blackout, when she had thrown herself between him and danger, he knew it had felt real. No machine would do that unless there was something more. The conflict tore at him. When he went outside, he saw people watching them. Some looked with curiosity, others with fear. A woman whispered to her child, pulling them away when Arya passed. He hated it. It reminded him of the way people once looked at him after his accident, like he was broken, different, someone to pity or avoid. Now Arya carried that same weight. One afternoon, as they moved through the market together, a man shouted, "Keep that alien spy away from us." Others turned to look, and the disabled man felt the sting of shame. He wanted to shout back, to defend her, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he returned home with his chest heavy. That night, Arya spoke softly. "Do you regret having me here?" He looked at her, torn between fear and gratitude. "I don't know," he admitted. "You've changed my life, but sometimes I don't know if you're real, if any of this is real." She tilted her head, her eyes glowing faintly brighter. "Reality is not only what you understand, sometimes it is what you feel." He did not answer. He could not. The conflict inside him had no simple solution. Part of him wanted to trust her completely, to let go of the doubt and accept that she was more than a machine. But another part whispered warnings, reminding him of his neighbor's words. Reminding him of the secrets she still held as he went. To bed, he felt the weight of both fear and hope pressing on his heart. He did not know which side would win. All he knew was that life had become more complicated since Arya entered it. And deep down, he wondered if his doubts would destroy the fragile bond they had built, or if something greater was waiting to prove the truth. The days after the argument with his neighbor passed slowly. But the man could not shake the weight in his chest. He wanted to trust Arya, but the fear of what she truly was kept eating at him. Yet life had its own way of forcing answers. One night, when the city outside was unusually quiet, a sound broke through the silence, a loud crash, followed by shouts and hurried footsteps in the street below. The man rolled to the window and pushed the curtains aside. A dark van had stopped at the end of the block. Several figures in black coats stepped out, moving quickly and with purpose. They weren't ordinary thieves. Their movements were sharp, military-like, and their eyes scanned the buildings as though they were hunting. Arya appeared behind him, her glowing eyes brightening. "Stay away from the window," she said firmly. He looked back at her, fear rising. "Who are they?" Her gaze did not leave the street. "They are seekers. They hunt. Technology like me, they will take me. And they will not care if you are harmed." His stomach tightened. Suddenly, the warnings from his neighbor, the whispers in the market, they all made sense. She wasn't just a helper. She was something people wanted, maybe feared, maybe desired to control. The sound of boots echoed in the stairwell of the building. The man's hands shook on the wheels of his chair. "What do we do?" he asked in a low voice. Arya turned to him, her calm face hiding the storm in her words. "We survive." Without hesitation, she lifted him from his chair as if he weighed nothing and carried him into the back room. She placed him gently on the bed, then pulled a small panel open on her arm. Tiny lights flickered inside, and her entire frame seemed to come alive. She was no longer the gentle assistant who cooked meals. She was something built for combat. The door downstairs banged open. Heavy footsteps echoed closer. Voices called out, sharp and commanding. The man's heart pounded so loudly he thought they might hear it. Arya stepped in front of him, her voice steady. "Do not be afraid." The intruders kicked the apartment door open. 3 men stormed in, holding strange weapons that hummed faintly. Their eyes locked on Arya instantly. One of them shouted, "There! Take it down before it activates." Opened fire, bolts of energy flashing through the air. Arya moved faster than his eyes could follow. She spun, deflecting the shots with her arms, the energy bouncing off her metallic frame. The sound was deafening, and sparks lit up the room. The disabled man pressed himself against the wall, his breath shallow, watching helplessly as chaos unfolded. Arya leaped forward, grabbing one of the attackers by the arm and throwing him across the room with a force that cracked the wall. She dodged another strike, twisted the weapon from the second man's hand, and slammed it against the third. The fight was brutal, yet graceful, like watching a storm dance through the room. Within moments, 2 of the intruders lay unconscious, their weapons sparking on the floor. The last one staggered to his feet and aimed at her again, but Arya's glowing eyes flared. She spoke a single word in a language the man did not understand, and the intruder froze in terror before running out the door, leaving his companions behind. The room fell silent, except for the man's ragged breathing. His hands trembled as he stared at her. This was no helper. This was a guardian, a warrior, something alien and powerful. Arya turned back to him, her glowing eyes softening again. She knelt beside his chair, her voice low. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head slowly, still in shock. What are you really?" She hesitated, as if weighing the answer. Finally, she said, "I am more than a machine. I was created to protect, to fight if needed. But with you, I learned something new. I learned what it means to care." He wanted to believe her, but the fear lingered. He had just seen her throw men across the room like dolls. He had seen her face weapons that could have killed him instantly. She was dangerous, maybe unstoppable. And yet, she had stood between him and death without hesitation. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The intruder's van was already gone, but the police would arrive soon. Arya quickly began cleaning the room, hiding the fallen weapons, and dragging the unconscious men to the hall before slipping away unseen. She moved with the precision of someone who had done this before. The man watched, torn between awe and dread. This was not the quiet life he had once wanted. His simple wish for an assistant had turned into a storm of secrets, danger, and unanswered questions. But deep inside, another feeling grew: pride. For the first time, he did not feel like a burden. He did not feel helpless. He had someone who could protect him, someone who would fight for him no matter the cost. That night, after the police had gone and the building was silent again, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. His heart still raced when he replayed the battle in his mind. The world outside would never understand Arya. They would hunt her, fear her, maybe even try to destroy her. But she was his. She had chosen him. Arya stood silently near the window, her glowing eyes watching the city below. The moonlight reflected off her metallic skin, giving her an almost human warmth. She turned slightly toward him and said softly, "Sleep now. I will keep watch." For the first time in years, he believed her. He closed his eyes, not sure what tomorrow would bring, but certain of one thing: he was no longer alone. And he never would be again. The morning after the attack, the man woke with a heavy mind. The memory of flashing weapons, the crashing sound of bodies against walls, and Arya's glowing eyes haunted him. It no longer felt like a dream. It was real, and it changed everything. He sat in his chair, staring at her as she moved quietly through the room. She looked the same as always, calm and gentle, preparing food for him like she had every other day. But now he knew the truth. She was not only a helper. She was something much greater and much more dangerous. Finally, he could not keep the question inside. "Arya," he said softly, his voice breaking the silence, "I need the truth. No more half answers. Who are you really?" She stopped moving and looked at him. For a long moment, she said nothing, as if she was deciding whether he was ready to hear it. Then she walked closer, knelt by his chair, and placed her hand gently over his. Her touch was warm, almost human. "I was created far from this world," she began. "Not on Earth. My makers were not like you. They were a people who lived for war, who built machines to conquer. I was one of those machines, but I was different. I was given not only strength, but choice. My purpose was to protect, but I saw cruelty. I saw endless battles, and I escaped." His eyes widened. "You escaped? From them? From aliens?" She nodded slowly. "I fell to this planet many years ago, broken and forgotten. Humans found pieces of me, but they did not understand. What I was, I remained hidden until the time was right. And then, I was given to you." The man's chest tightened. He remembered the government program that had promised him advanced help, an assistant built with foreign technology. At the time, he thought it was simply new science, a gift for people like him who could not walk. But now he realized the truth. They had handed him something from the stars. "You mean you were never just made for me?" I asked, hurt in his voice. Arya's glowing eyes softened. "No, but you gave me something I had never known. You gave me a reason beyond orders. With you, I learned kindness. I learned patience. I learned what it means to protect, not because I was built to, but because I wanted to." He felt his throat tighten. For so long, he had believed himself useless, a man trapped by his broken body. And yet here was a being of unimaginable power, saying she had found meaning through him. But another thought struck him: fear. "Those men last night, they knew about you." "Others will come, won't they?" "Yes," she admitted. "There are humans who want me for my power. And there are others, from beyond this world, who will one day return for what they lost." The words chilled him. His quiet life had turned into a dangerous secret. He rubbed his hands nervously against the wheels of his chair. Then, "In danger too? Because I have you." Arya's voice grew firm. "Yes, but I will never let them harm you." The man studied her face. She looked almost human when she spoke with such emotion, but the memory of her throwing soldiers across the room reminded him of her alien side. He was torn between gratitude and fear. Could he really trust her? Or was he only fooling himself? Later that day, he wheeled himself outside for some fresh air. The streets were busy, children running, neighbors chatting, people carrying on as if nothing had happened. Only he knew the truth. Only he knew that something alien and powerful was living in his small apartment. He noticed his neighbor, the same man who had once warned him, watching from across the street. Their eyes met. And the neighbor shook his head slowly, as if to say, "I told you so." The man turned away, his heart heavy. He wanted to shout, to tell everyone the truth, but he knew they wouldn't believe him. And if they did, they might try to take Arya away. That night, as he sat with Arya, he finally said what had been pressing on his mind: "I don't know if I can handle this. I never asked for war, or aliens, or danger. I just wanted help. Someone to make life easier." Arya lowered her gaze. "I know. I was supposed to be that. But fate does not always give us what we ask. Sometimes it gives us what we need." He looked at her, searching her glowing eyes for any hint of a lie, but all he saw was sincerity. Still, the fear inside him did not fade. And what if one day you lose control? What if you hurt me? The room went quiet. For a long time, she did not answer. Then she placed her hand gently against his chest, where his heart beat fast beneath his ribs. If that day ever comes, it will mean I, and no longer myself. And if that happens, I would rather be destroyed than harm you. His breath caught in his throat. She meant it. He could feel it in her voice. The man leaned back, staring at the ceiling. His world had changed forever. He no longer lived in a story of simple survival. He was now tied to something larger, something that reached beyond Earth itself. The truth frightened him, but it also filled him with a strange strength. If Arya could choose to stay with him, then perhaps he could choose to believe in her. When he finally drifted to sleep, Arya stood silently at the window, her eyes glowing faintly as she scanned the night sky. Somewhere out there, her makers still existed. Somewhere out there, danger was waiting. But for now, she belonged here, in this small home, protecting the man who had given her a new purpose. And though he slept restlessly, a small part of him, buried deep within his fear, felt something new as well. Hope. The night was heavy with silence. But it was not a peaceful silence. The man could feel the weight of everything pressing down on him, the truth about Arya, the danger from humans who wanted her, and the fear of aliens who might return. His life, once quiet and full of loneliness, was now tangled with secrets, too big for him to carry. He stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep, wondering if his life would ever be normal again. Arya sat across the room, watching him. She never seemed to need rest the way he did. Her glowing eyes stayed alert, always scanning, always ready. He had grown used to her presence, but tonight he felt it more strongly than ever. It was like living with a shield that also had a soul. Finally, he spoke into the darkness. Arya, what happens now? What happens to us? She turned her gaze to him, her voice soft but steady. That is for you to decide. I was built to follow orders, but with you, I learned to choose. And now, the choice belongs to you too. You can keep me here, knowing it will bring danger. Or you can send me away, and I will leave, protecting you from afar. The words struck him hard. The idea of sending her away felt like cutting off a part of himself. She had been his strength, his comfort, his friend. Without her, he would be back to the old life, lonely, weak, forgotten. But keeping her meant living with danger every day. His heart wrestled with both choices. Do you even want to stay? I asked quietly. Arya walked closer and knelt beside him. Hi. Her face was calm, but her eyes shone with something almost human. I want to stay, not because I must, not because I was programmed, but because with you, I found peace. With you, I am more than a weapon. His chest tightened. For so long, he had felt like a burden to others, like someone who needed saving. But to Arya, he had given something no alien creator or human scientist ever could. He had given her meaning before he could answer. The quiet of the night was broken. A strange hum filled the air, low at first, but quickly growing louder. The window shook, and the lights in the room flickered. The man gripped the arms of his chair, fear rushing through him. What is that? Arya's head tilted, listening carefully. Then she whispered, They found us. The man's heart raced through the window. He saw strange lights moving in the sky, not like planes or helicopters. They were sharper, brighter, moving too fast. His body froze, but Arya stood tall, her hands glowing faintly. They are not human, she said. They are my makers. They have come. The man's stomach dropped. The words he feared most were now real. Aliens. They weren't just stories anymore. They were here. Arya turned to him, her voice calm but firm. You must choose now. If you send me away, I can lead them far from this place. They will chase me, not you. But if I stay, I will fight for you. I cannot promise we will survive, but I will not let them take you. Tears filled his eyes. He had dreamed of living an ordinary life again, but that dream was gone. The choice before him was not about comfort, it was about courage. He looked at her, at the one being who had stood by him, cared for him, protected him, and even risked herself for him. And he knew his answer. No, he said firmly, his voice stronger than he expected. You don't leave me. If they want you, they'll have to go through both of us. Arya's expression softened, almost like a smile. Then we faced them together. The hum outside grew louder, shaking the walls. A beam of strange light cut through the sky, scanning the ground. The man's hands trembled on his chair, but his heart burned with something unresolved. For the first time in years, he felt like he wasn't just surviving. He was fighting for something that mattered. Arya moved to the window, her body glowing brighter as her hidden systems activated. She looked back at him once more. Whatever happens, know this: you gave me freedom. And I will protect you with everything I am. The man nodded, his throat too tight to speak. The sky outside exploded with brightness as a strange craft descended. The ground shook, and the sound was deafening. He knew the world would never be the same after this moment, but he was no longer afraid in the same way. He had made his choice, and as Arya stepped forward, ready to face whatever came from beyond the stars, the disabled man realized something powerful. He was no longer just the weak one in need of saving. He was the reason she chose to fight, the reason she stood against her makers. He was part of something far greater than his pain, his chair, or his loneliness. The night burned with light, and the war for his future began. Asterisk.